former spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces, and also Wing Commander Praful Bakshi also is live with us from studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us here. To you first, Lieutenant Colonel Conricus. This, of course, is something that has not been seen in a long time, unprecedented escalation, and this is something that is seen as an intel failure as far as Israel is concerned. They could not really, expect such a big attack, a barrage of rockets of this level. How do you see this, sir?
Yes, hello. It is an extremely sad day today in Israel. I would say that this is a watershed moment in Israeli history. Never before in the times of modern Israel, if we don't go back to the Second World War and before, have Israeli civilians at such large numbers been at the mercy of murderous terrorists. We've endured terrorist attacks in the past, but never at this scale and not with as many Israeli civilian casualties. So the paradigms of yesterday must be gone, and we are now looking forward to a new situation against these murderous animals that have crossed from the Gaza Strip into Israel, that have butchered civilians, women, children, elderly, and men, and also have taken, according to their own reports, more than 50 Israeli civilians, Israelis rather, into the Gaza Strip, holding them hostage. Some of them dead, some of them alive. So this is a situation that we have not faced in the past. Definitely very tough questions will be asked by Israeli civilians to the Israeli government and the Israeli military. How could this have happened? But let me assure you that our focus at this time now is first and foremost to rectify the situation inside Israel, to either kill or capture all of the terrorists that are still inside Israel. And we are more than 7 hours after the start of the attack, and there are still terrorists inside Israel. They shall be either apprehended or killed. And once that is done, then the order of the day will be to start planning and executing an Israeli response, which will have to be unprecedented in scope, scale, and severity against the terrorists that were brazen enough to launch this horrible attack against Israeli civilians.
There have been talks about, peace talks between Saudi and Israel, normalization of ties, as they call it. And we had, of course, Iran opposing it. And it still, of course, after this attack, has backed Hamas. What do you think would be the trigger for this sort of an escalation from the Hamas?
Well, it's no secret, and it's very clear to anybody following events here in Western Asia, is that Iran has its tentacles in the region. Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. They are the ones that are funding and equipping both Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and many other terrorist organizations at our borders. It remains to be seen what the other proxies of Iran will do at this time, if they will also join the fighting or if they will opt, might I add, wisely to stay out. I say wisely because if they care about the fate of the areas where they operate and the lives of the civilians there, then they should opt to stay out. And Israel will focus its efforts on Gaza, making sure that Hamas will never again be able to launch such an attack against Israeli civilians. But I think you are very correct in pointing out that an escalation between Israel and Gaza, Hamas, serves Iranian purposes in order to undermine or sidetrack the positive developments of normalization under American auspices between Saudi Arabia, the world's largest Sunni Muslim country, and Israel. Instead of that, we are now dealing with Sunni extremism, with ISIS-like barbarism against our civilians, and this will take a lot of time to set straight. But I can tell you and the viewers that trust in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, this will be set straight, and the terrorists who laid hand on Israeli civilians will pay the price.
Around 3 to 5,000 rockets, 3,000 to 5,000, the figure that has been claimed by the Hamas, that this is the number of rockets that have been fired. How does, how does Israel plan to really deal with this? It's calling it the Operation Iron Swords. So how do we see this? What will be involved? What could be the part of this sort of an operation? If you can get us an idea of how Israel could be, fighting out the situation.
Israel, up until now, in many operations against the Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, we've been fighting with one hand tied behind our back. We haven't used even a tenth of our military capabilities out of the sanctity of the human lives and the fact that we want to hit as little civilians as possible. Today, these rules of engagement have changed. And Hamas has opened the gates of hell on Gaza. And what Israel will do will be to use much more of the power at its disposal to strike Hamas from the air using the Air Force, but also, I think very likely, strike and hunt down Hamas on the ground and underground in order to make sure that Hamas will not be able to launch another attack like this ever again. If it means moving into the Gaza Strip, if it means toppling the Hamas regime, these are things that are on the table. And the Prime Minister has said very clearly that Israel will deliver a blow to our enemies that they have never seen before. And I hope those are not empty words, but I hope that they will be translated to real action that will leave a resounding message to Hamas and all of the other terrorist organizations watching.
Well, of course, what we are hearing from the authorities, of course, the government in Israel, that Hamas has made a grave mistake. That is the word that they are using. But do you feel that the internal conflicts, or if I could call it the political turmoil, the anti-Netanyahu protests and tensions that were brewing in Israel for the longest time now in past few months, has that somehow affected this? We see the preparedness also being affected. Has this really hampered, as far as this dealing with Hamas is concerned? And Hamas somewhere, saw that opportunity and escalated this.
I'm sure that in terms of focus and attention, the internal issues in Israel, the internal discussion, have for sure divided attention and focus on, instead of external threats, to internal issues. Maybe Hamas thought that this would be an opportune time to strike against Israel, but what I think that all of our enemies in history have found, whether it was the Syrian state, the Egyptian state, Hezbollah, or anybody else, when Israel is attacked, we have the ability to close our ranks, bridge our differences, and come together in order to defend our homeland. And that is what Israel will do now. We will discard political differences, we will discard anything that is irrelevant for the time being, and we will focus on defending our sovereignty and civilians and inflicting an extremely heavy price on those that dared attack us and kill our civilians.
Right, sir, I want to ask from you, there have been, of course, now updates coming in that at least 53 Israelis have been taken hostage by Hamas. And on social media, of course, this is not verified, but there are reports of the commander as well, the IDF commander being also captured. Are you picking up any information on that front?
This is a media warfare, as a media battle, as much as it is a battle on the ground. And Hamas is seeking to amplify its activities on the ground using social media and to terrorize as many as possible Israeli civilians, to wreak mayhem and havoc in Israel, and to confuse and to demoralize. That is what they're trying to do. We will have to wait to hear confirmed information from Israeli confirmed sources. Terrorist organizations, the same ones that Indians have faced over the years, always aspire to, I'm sorry for the noise, always aspire to use information in order to terrorize. It's nothing different here, and hopefully we'll be able to root this out as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us here. Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus there is the former spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces, who was just telling us his thoughts and what is to be expected here. And of course,